Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Empty Cloud Monastery. This evening we'll be looking at another discourse of the Buddha. This is from the Anguttara Nikaya, chapter 4, sutta number 32, Sangaha Sutta. And this was requested by one of our viewers, so it's also a reminder that you're always welcome to request particular suttas, and if they're relatively short, then there's a chance that we'll do it one of these days. So this particular discourse, again, it's the Sangaha Sutta, and the word Sangaha literally means holding together or keeping together. So it's from the verb ganhati, which means to grab or to hold, and the prefix sang, which means together or complete. So Sangaha, again, literally means holding together or keeping together. But the usual meaning of this word is has the sense of taking care. So taking care of others, taking care of people. But it literally has that sense of creating a sense of harmony or inclusiveness or stability. So Bhante Suddhaso translated it as inclusion, so in the sense of being inclusive of others. I think Bhante Bodhi translated it differently. Let's see how Bhante Bodhi handled this one. Bhante Bodhi called it sustaining. So again, in sense of sustaining a relationship, sustaining a positive connection with others. So again, I'm reading here from first from Bhante Suddhaso's translation. He says, mendicants, there are these 4 ways of being inclusive. So inclusive here is his translation of Sangaha. And for comparison, Bhante Bodhi translates that same line as, bhikkhus, there are these 4 means of sustaining a favorable relationship. So both translations are giving a sense of the intended meaning here, which is this is a way of supporting a communal harmony or of looking after each other, of providing the grounds for having a harmonious and lasting relationship, which is mutually supportive. And what for? And so the Buddha here lists 4 things, which in Pali are dana. So dana means giving or generosity. Then peya vajja. So peya vajja literally means lovable words, lovable speech. So speech which is agreeable, which is pleasant. And Bhante Suddhaso translated it as kindly words, and Bhante Bodhi as endearing speech. Again, both these translations are giving a sense of the meaning here. So the third one is attacharya. So atta means benefit, and charya means behavior or conduct. So attacharya means behaving in a way which is beneficial, which is helpful. And Bhante Suddhaso translate that as taking care, and Bhante Bodhi as beneficent conduct. And then the fourth term the Buddha uses here is samanatata. So samanatata has the meaning of equality or impartiality. And those are in fact the 2 translations that we see here. So equality with Bhante Suddhaso and impartiality with Bhante Bodhi. So just to speak in a bit more detail about these 4. Dana, again, giving or generosity. So how is it that we support and sustain the people around us? How is it that we take care of the people around us? How is it that we create a sense of mutual harmony, of mutual care? Well, the first one is through acts of generosity. So giving to each other, so giving each other attention, giving each other time, giving each other energy and effort. So these are some of the most immediately tangible things that we do. So here in a monastery, when we're constantly living in community, one of the most important things that we do is we pay attention to each other. So this is an act of generosity, so giving attention. giving presents to each other. So actually looking and seeing what others are doing, listening to what they're saying, and looking to see how we can be there for them. Giving energy and effort. So that means also looking to see how we can help the people around us. If you see somebody trying to move a heavy object, well, you just go and help them. If you see somebody in the middle of an activity and you have some way of being of support, you can go and support. Or sometimes giving energy, giving effort, giving time. Sometimes this means doing anonymous, kind acts. Maybe you notice that somebody's space is a bit messy, and so you go and clean it up for them. Maybe they don't even know who's done it, but it's that little act of kindness which then brings a sense of appreciation into their heart. So for example, I came down here in the library here at the monastery, and I noticed how nice and clean it is, how it's clean and neat. And that brings a sense of lightness and ease. It's like, oh, how lovely. Somebody gave the time and effort to make the library a more inviting space for each other. And of course, giving also can have the sense of giving in a more material sense. So giving objects or gifts to each other. So earlier today, someone gave me some tea, which was quite lovely. So it's not that I didn't have tea, but rather it's that when we're on the receiving end of a gift, it always brings a sense of brightness and joy to the mind. So then also we look for ways to give to others, ways of practicing generosity to others. And that helps to create this sense of mutual appreciation. Then the second object on the list, peyavajja, so lovable speech, endearing speech, kind words. So this also is something very important, is paying attention to how we use speech when we're interacting with each other. It can be very easy to speak in a brusque and direct way. It's very efficient, but it's also not necessarily kind. We can say things which are true, but not kind. We can say things which are maybe even beneficial, maybe even helpful. But if they're delivered in a way which is harsh or rude, or not at the right time, not in the right place, not in the right way, then it can create friction and disharmony. It can create enmity and resentment. So using loving speech and lovable speech means always trying to infuse our words with loving kindness and compassion. So this does sometimes mean saying things which other people don't want to hear, but we only do so when it's beneficial, when it's the right time, and when we can do so in a way which is kind and gentle and appropriate. And also recognizing that every time we open our mouths, we have the opportunity to give a gift to the people around us. So if we speak in a way which is kind and friendly, then we're giving a gift. Whereas if we speak in a way which is not so kind and not so friendly, then we're making things a little bit too awkward for the people around us. So putting an effort into using lovable speech, endearing speech, again, is a way that we help to create a harmonious atmosphere, which is especially important in community life. Note that this is to some degree culture dependent. So every culture has its own particular customs around speech, its own particular ideas about what speech is too direct or what speech is too vague, what speech is too harsh, or what speech is maybe not clear enough, could be more clear, more precise. So this also requires a certain amount of cultural sensitivity. So wherever you are, to try to get a sense of how people use speech in that particular place, and to try to adjust to the local ways of speaking. So I spend a lot of time in Italy, and the way people use speech is quite a bit different there. So if I tried to speak in Italy the way I speak in America, it wouldn't go over very well. And vice versa. If I speak here the way I speak there, that also might not have the desired effect. So we also need to be sensitive to the cultural context that we're in, and also the specific people that we're around. So this also is a manifestation of paying attention to each other in a kind and loving way. It also means watching to see the actual real effect that our words have on other people, on the people around us, and constantly modulating the way that we use speech to try to find the way of speaking which is of the most benefit to whoever we're with. And this can mean making sharp differences in tone. One thing I remember from when I was a junior monk in the early stages of training, the abbot at the monastery there would radically alter his way of talking depending on which monk he was talking to. So to some monks, he would speak in a very soft, very gentle, very polite way. But there was one monk in particular who, whenever the abbot was speaking to this one particular monk, the abbot would speak in a very sharp, direct, almost hostile way. But through observing the effects, it was very clear that that was because that was the kind of speech that was understandable to that monk. It wasn't spoken from a place of anger or of hurtfulness, but rather the abbot was actually skillfully speaking in a way which could be understood by that particular monk, a way in which the message would get through. So this is also something that we need to use in our own use of speech, constantly paying attention to who we're actually with, and trying to use the way of speaking which is most relevant, most supportive to the people that we're in the presence of. And the third one on the list, so attacharya means acting in a beneficial way. So again, this means with every action that we take, we always want to consider what effect is this action going to have on the members of the community, on the people that I'm with. Is it going to have a positive effect or a negative effect? Is it going to bring benefit or is it going to bring harm? So this also is a way of stepping outside of our normal self-centered bubble of like, well, I do what I want and who cares how it affects others. Instead, we always consider, what am I doing? What effect is it going to have on every being it impacts? And how can I act in a way that brings the most benefit to the people within my influence? And the fourth one is samanatata, which means impartiality or equality or evenness. So this means that we don't play favorites. So when we're in community, we don't play favorites, but rather we see everybody present as being valuable members of the community, worthy of our care, worthy of our attention, worthy of our kindness, worthy of our generosity. And we do our best to make sure that we're properly taking care of everybody that's present. So not playing favorites, not creating that sense of exclusion to those which are lower on our list of preferences. And so, of course, the truth is that even if we're trying to be impartial, the truth is we all naturally tend to form a list of favorites in our mind. So it's also good to be honest with ourselves. So we look at our mind and we're like, okay, yep, that person is number one of the people currently present. They're my favorite. That person's number two, that one's number three, that one's number four, and so on. Be honest with ourselves about this tendency to automatically form a preference list or a favorites list in our mind. Because the more clearly aware we are of that, the more actively we can work against it. Because then we'll see like, oh, I'm naturally giving a little more attention and a little bit more care to my favorite person. So I need to make an active effort to give the same level of care and attention to the other people present. So being honest with ourselves about this tendency to subconsciously favoritize particular people then makes it easier to counteract that tendency towards favoritism and instead to cultivate genuine impartiality. So then the sutta concludes with a short poem. So as is often the case with many of the short discourses in the Pali Canon. And so it begins with effectively a repetition of what the Buddha already said. So he says, giving and kindly words, so that's danancha peyavajancha, taking care, atacharya, and equality, samanatatacha dhammesu, so equality in all things. So that means in any situation, in any condition, we always try to be impartial, to be fair. It says, in each case as they deserve, so as is appropriate in every situation. And the Buddha says these ways of being inclusive in the world, or these ways of taking care of each other, are like the linchpin of a moving chariot. So the linchpin is the central pin which the wheels turn on. And so like the axle. So without the axle, a vehicle falls apart. It's not useful, it can't do anything. So in the same way, the Buddha is saying that these four modes of cultivating communal harmony, of cultivating a sense of taking care of each other and inclusiveness within the community, these are like the axle of a wheel. It's what makes it possible for the vehicle to function and to operate. In the same way, these four modes of taking care of each other in this wholehearted, inclusive way, these four modes are what makes community life function. It's what makes it possible. And the Buddha then makes this statement. He says, if there were not these ways of being inclusive, or if there were not these ways of taking care, neither mother nor father would be respected and honored for what they've done for their children. So here the Buddha's bringing in also a reference to the sense of family. So something that we see throughout the suttas is the importance of respecting and appreciating our parents, especially respecting and appreciating the fact that they gave us a body at a bare minimum. And for most people, there's also a lot of good that's been done for us by our parents. So appreciating the good things they've done for us, having a sense of respect and gratitude towards our parents. And when we're in community life, then community becomes like a micro-family. So it's like entering into a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood with each other. So we bring that same sense of familial piety, that sense of the importance of taking care of and looking after the other members of the community as though they were our own family. And for monastics, it actually goes one step farther in that the Buddha actually said that Buddhist monastics should view each other as brother and sister. And we should take care of each other as though we were blood relatives, as though we were family members. But also when we're in community, when we're staying in a monastery or interacting with other community members, we should bring that same attitude of treating each other with the ideal respect and care that we have for our own family members. Of course, if you have a dysfunctional relationship with your family, try not to bring that into the community life. So instead, try to cultivate the ideal family. So genuinely loving, caring, mutually appreciative, mutually respectful kind of family relationship. And then the verse concludes, the Buddha says, since these ways of being inclusive, so these principles of Sangaha, this word that I've been explaining, of taking care, of looking after each other, of supporting togetherness and harmony. Since these ways do exist, the Buddha says, the wise regard them well, so they achieve greatness and are praised. So this also is just pointing to the fact that these principles are praised by the wise. And these principles are also not exclusively Buddhist. Actually, if you talk to any particularly moral, upstanding person of any particular religion, then they're likely to respect these principles, these basic principles of loving kindness, of mutual support, mutual care. So these are universal qualities of human goodness, which the Buddha is pointing to as being valued and respected by the wise. So just to reiterate, to conclude, I'll reiterate the 4 points again. So dana, giving, generosity. Peyavajja, lovable speech, endearing speech, kindly speech. Attacharya, beneficial conduct, acting for the benefit of those involved. And samanatata, impartiality, equality, non-favoritism. So that's the end of the discourse. At this time we can respect the sutta with 3 sadhus, and then I'll see if there's any questions. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, and hello to the people joining in online. Hello to Demsine, Gita, Nick, Maria, Mike, Vivian, Karuna, Yankee, Bhumika, Manol, Julie, Mary, Lydia, Hoa, Norma, Bhavani, John, and Jayanta. Welcome, all of you. And I see one question online. So Bhavani says, why family members can't live harmoniously like monks in a Sangha? Well, you're assuming the Sangha is always harmonious, which, oh, if only that was true. So they say, how a family can live harmoniously. Well, actually, the Buddha here gave 4 very relevant pieces of advice. So these 4 modes of supporting communal harmony, these are not just for monastic communities. They can also be applied in your own family. If you follow these 4 principles in your own family, then you'll probably find things go a lot more smoothly. But it can be difficult. So one of the big problems that happens in families is that we develop extremely strong habits of behaving and reacting in particular ways with our family and with our family members. And very often those habits are not based upon wholesome principles. We develop them when we're children, when we're teenagers, when we're not particularly wise, not necessarily particularly moral. So those habits become deeply ingrained in the mind, and it's very difficult to reverse them, very difficult to change them when we're older. Not impossible, but difficult. So we have to make an extra strong effort when interacting with our family members. We have to make an extra strong effort to identify unwholesome habits and to try to cultivate wholesome conduct to replace and remove those unwholesome habits. But yeah, I mean, monks in a Sangha, again, just because people are monks doesn't necessarily mean they're living harmoniously. That's the ideal, and it's certainly what we aim for. But also monks, we have to work at it. We have to work at communal harmony. We have to work at looking after and caring for each other in the ideal way that the Buddha describes. It doesn't happen automatically just because someone's a monk. We still have to put effort into it. Sometimes a lot of effort into it. And that's the only question I see online. Anything from the residents here? Okay, good. So we'll conclude with 3 more sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And we'll see you all next time.